man-in-the-middle attacks, or MITM. Okay. Now, what is man-in-the-middle attack? Now, it is a common type of cybersecurity attack that allows attackers to eavesdrop on the communication between two targets. The attack takes place in between two legitimately communicating hosts, allowing the attacker to listen to a conversation they should normally not be able to listen to, hence the name man in the middle. As you can see from this graph, we have Alice and we have Bob, and Alice will send a message to Bob. Now we have Eve, which is the eavesdropper, and it will start listening to the message and intercepting the traffic. And actually, this is what Elliot did in the scene when he started intercepting the traffic. And he noticed the Tor website. Don't worry, we will talk about this later on in details, how he managed to do such a thing. Technically, I mean. Now here you can see that Alice and Bob are having conversation, and Eve wants to eavesdrop on the conversation but also remain transparent. Now Eve could tell Alice that she was Bob and tell Bob that she was Alice. This would lead Alice to believe she's speaking to Bob while actually revealing her part of the conversation to Eve. And Eve could then gather information from this and alter the responses, pass the message along to Bob, who thinks he's talking to Alice. As a result, Eve is able to transparently hijack their conversation. So the types of man-in-the-middle attacks. We have the roach access point. So devices equipped with wireless cards will often try to auto-connect to the access point that is emitting the strongest signal. Attackers can set up their own wireless access point and trick nearby devices to join its domain. All of the victim's network traffic can now be manipulated by the attacker. This is dangerous because the attacker doesn't even have to be a trusted network to do this. The attacker simply needs a close enough physical proximity. We have the ARP spoofing. Now ARP is the address resolution protocol, and it is used to resolve the IP addresses to physical MAC or media access control addresses in a local network area. Okay. Now when a host needs to talk to host with a given IP address, it references the ARP cache to resolve the IP address to a MAC address. If the address is not known, a request is made asking for MAC address of the device with the IP address. Because after all, this is a layer 2, the data link layer, which is MAC address. So we need the ARP to resolution, or to map the IP to MAC and vice versa. Actually, we have something called reverse ARP as well, RARP. This is to do the vice versa thing, okay? Now, actually, this is the thing that Elliot used to hijack the traffic, technically, okay? But again, we will talk about this, how he managed to do that, what are the tools, and how to do such attack. Don't worry, we will do that, and we will build the environment for that, actually. Now we have also the attacker wishing to pose as another host could respond to request. It shouldn't be responding to it with its own MAC address. So with some precisely placed packets, an attacker can sniff the private traffic between two hosts. Valuable information can be extracted from the traffic, such as the exchange of session tokens, yielding full access to application accounts that the attacker should not be able to access. Now we have the MDNS spoofing, or the multicast DNS. So the multicast DNS is similar to DNS, but it is done on local area network, the LAN, using broadcast like the ARP. This makes it perfect target for spoofing attacks, and the local name resolution system is supposed to make the configuration of network devices extremely simple. Also, the user do not have to know exactly which addresses their devices should be communicating with. They let the system resolve it for them. Devices such as TVs, printers, and entertainment systems make use of this protocol since they are typically on trusted network. So when an application needs to know the address of a certain device, such as tv.local, an attacker can easily respond to that request with fake data, instructing it to resolve to an address it has control over. So since devices keep a local cache of addresses, the victim will now see the attacker's device as trusted for a duration of time. We have the DNS spoofing. Similar to the way ARP resolve IP address to MAC address on the LAN, DNS resolve domain name to IP. Okay, I think you are familiar with that. If you are not, it's okay. This is the domain name system or server. This is to map domain names to IP or IP to domain names. So when using DNS spoofing attack, the attacker attempts to introduce corrupt DNS cache information to a host in an attempt to access another host using their domain name. Okay? So this leads to victim sending sensitive information to malicious hosts with the belief they are sending information to trusted source. An attacker who has already spoofed an IP address could have a much easier time spoofing DNS simply by resolving the IP address, by resolving the address of a DNS server to the attacker's address. So we have man-in-the-middle attack techniques. The first thing, which is the sniffing. Attackers can use packets capture tools to inspect packets at a lower level using specific wireless devices that are allowed to be put into monitoring or promiscuous mode can allow an attacker to see packets that are not intended for it to see, such as packet address or to other hosts. Now we have the packet injection. An attacker can also leverage their device's monitoring mode to inject malicious packets into data communication streams. The packets can blend in with valid data communication streams appearing to be part of the communication but malicious in nature. And packet injection usually involves first sniffing to determine how and when to craft and send packets. We have the session hijacking. Most web applications use a login mechanism that generates a temporary session token to use for future requests to avoid requiring the user to type a password at every page. So an attacker can sniff sensitive traffic to identify the session token for a user and use it to make a request as the user. And the attacker doesn't need to spoof once he has session token. We have the SSL stripping. Since using HTTPS is a common safeguard against ARP or DNS spoofing, attackers use SSL stripping to intercept packets and alter their HTTPS-based address request to go to their HTTP equivalent point, forcing the host to make requests to the server unencrypted. Sensitive information can be leaked in a plain text. Now, how to detect man-in-the-middle attack? Now, detecting man-in-the-middle attack can be very difficult without taking the proper steps. If you aren't actively searching to determine if your communication have been intercepted, man-in-the-middle attack can potentially go unnoticed until it is too late. So checking for proper page authentication and implementation, some sort of tamper detection are typically the key methods to detect possible attack. So the tamper detection. But these procedures might require extra forensic analysis after the fact. Okay? So it is important to take precautionary measures to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks before they occur, rather than attempting to detect them while they are actively occurring. Being aware of browsing practices and recognizing potentially harmful areas can be essential to maintaining a secure network. Okay? Now, what is the best practices to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks? The first thing, strong web or web encryption on access point. So having a strong encryption mechanism on wireless access point prevents unwanted user from joining your network just by being nearby. A weak encryption mechanism can allow an attacker to brute force his way into a network and begin man-in-the-middle attack. So the stronger the encryption implementation, the safer you are. Another thing, which is strong router login credentials. Of course, don't use admin. So it is essential to make sure your default router login is changed. Not just your Wi-Fi password, but your router login credentials. If an attacker finds your router login credential, they can change your DNS servers to their malicious servers, or even worse, infect your router with malicious software. We have virtual private network, the VPN. So VPNs can be used to create a secure environment for sensitive information within a local area network. So they use a key-based encryption to create a subnet for secure communication. This way, even if an attacker happens to get on a network that is shared, he will not be able to decipher the traffic in the VPN because it is encrypted. We can force HTTPS. So HTTPS can be used to securely communicate over HTTP using public-private key exchange. This prevents an attacker from having any use of data he may be sniffing website. So you should only use HTTPS and not provide HTTP alternatives. Users can install browser plugins to enforce always using HTTPS on requests. The public key pair based authentication. Man-in-the-middle attacks typically involve spoofing something or another. So public key pair based authentication like RSA can be used in various layers of the stack to help ensure whether the things you are communicating with are actually the things you want to communicate to be